Okay, today we're going to take a look at your first C program. We're going to do this in a very basic way just so you have a good foundation for the C language. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a Notepad++ here. And when I do that, I'm going to go ahead and type some code. The first thing I'm going to do is the first line is going to be pound include. And this will go ahead and add a header file from the C library that's in every C program. It's pound include stdio.h for standard io.h. And this is in every C program. This library will contain many functions that you will use in your C program. For your very first one, we're going to be doing a print statement which comes from the standard io.h library, and that's in C. Okay, but before I go any further, I'm using Notepad++, which is just a basic text editor. You're probably using something like Visual Studio. And Visual Studio is a magnificent tool for designing C programs. I like to keep mine a little bit basic so that it could show you just the content without using actual Visual Studio itself. I could focus on the code itself. So before I go any further, I have to do another step, which is actually save this file as a C file. I'm going to go ahead and save it on my desktop and save it as hello.c. And once I do that, you'll notice that this actually kind of changes color here a little bit when I'm typing code up. In every C file, you're going to have a main function, and the way the main function looks like is int main open parentheses, close parentheses, open curly brace, and close curly brace. And this will be your main function. Every C program has a main function. It's the function it calls first when it's running, so that your program will begin. Now let's look at the structure of this main function. This is the word main that's declared here. Let's see now that this name of this function is called main, and you'll have different functions later on this semester. When we get to that, they'll have different names, but you cannot name any other function main, because this is the main one that C will look for. If you made other functions that are called main, it'll confuse it and give you an error. The parentheses are used is that if there's any arguments to be passed into this function, which once again we'll be covering on later on. But for right now, we're not going to be passing in any arguments. We're just going to set up a basic function, and int refers to the return type of this function. Later on, we will be looking at functions and what they return data to back to main, but we don't have anything to be returning later on today, so we're going to be using return 0 to end our main, in which we're going to be returning the value of 0 because this requires an int to be returned at the end of your main function. But for right now, we just going to end our main with return 0 after our lines of code. So let's look at something we actually can do. This print statement here, printf, stands for print format. This printf comes from the standard io.h, which it looks like I forgot to close it, C library. And that is where it's going to be able to pull this printf function from. It's coming from this library right here. Now, printf, interesting, printf, I'm going to say I love programming, and then I'm going to put a backslash and an N right afterwards. What this stands for, this is an escape character, this backslash, and then followed by a letter that will indicate what it should do. In this case, escape character followed by N means that I want a new line. So this is called a new line character. So when this line does is that it's going to print to the screen I love programming, and then the cursor is going to be showing on the next line because of this new line character. You notice that I contain this statement inside of double quotes and inside of parentheses. Now we talked about the main having parentheses and open curly brace here. Seems to be erasing things here. I'm not too sure why. Now the print statement here inside of the parentheses does have parameters that it's putting in, and this main didn't, but this function does, and it's a statement called I love programming. And you'll notice that at the end I also at the end of the parentheses I closed it with a semicolon. Now the reason I did that is that every statement that's in C must end with a semicolon. Just like the return 0 down here, I have a semicolon as well. This ends the statement. Okay, without that semicolon, the program will give you an error when you try to run it. Okay, so very simple. I love programming. Just one basic statement, showing you some structure of a main, opening and closing it. Inside of it, I have a one print statement that ends with a semicolon, and a return 0 that ends with a semicolon. Okay, ends for main. So I'm going to go ahead and try to run this. You might actually be running this in Visual Studio, but I'm going to run it on a command line itself. And then looks like I'm going to have to change directories to the desktop. And the way I'm going to do it is that I'm going to save, I'm going to run this program as GCC, which is a compiler, a standard standard C compiler, GCC hello.c. Hit enter. Oh, there's all kinds of stuff going on here. Let's see here. And the reason why I'm having so much trouble is that after I typed all this, I forgot to save it. So I should save it. And let's try that again. GCC hello.c, and there we go. It compiles fine. But actually, this was a good example of that. If I didn't, if I had some errors here, it would show up here in this area. But anyway, I just go ahead and compiled it. Yours will be a little bit different on the Visual Studio if you're using that. And like I said, if there was any errors when I compiled it, it would have showed up right here. In your desktop, if you're running it like me, you would have seen another file would have appeared called A. And when we type A now and just run it, it's an executable file generated by the code that was compiled from the GCC compiler. If I type A and hit enter, it'll run that executable file. And for Windows, an executable file will run your program, and it says I love programming, which is exactly what I wanted to print to the screen. You notice that there is a space right below it after I hit I love programming. We could demonstrate that without the new line character if I just did this and hit save and compile it again. Type A, it says I love programming. You see, there's a space there by the new line character that was giving it that extra space. Now it's just together for without the new line character. Okay, well, hopefully this was a great little intro to C programming. We're going to be obviously doing a lot more this time around, and we'll introduce you to a lot of topics. I'll see you in the next video.